Good afternoon, everyone. This is Pastor Devin Miller, the real pastor, the true pastor, bringing you yet another segment of our show, Financial Matters with Devin and Holger. What we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks is the credit card industry and how the fees are strangling America and how we can make a difference using the StarFish program and process. And so we are going to go ahead and bring Holger on and continue the conversation. So let me find there it is. All right, Holger, how are you?
I'm doing awesome. Blessed and highly favored.
There you go. There you go. And the flavor of the day is chocolate. All right.
Oh, there you go. I like chocolate.
Or chocolate swirl. Let's say that. Chocolate and vanilla. There you go. But we're going to go ahead and continue on with our conversation about StarFish and, more importantly, how the financial industry is taking advantage of us and how we can change that and create a financial revolution. So we covered the goal, we covered the steps, and we covered why the goal is needed. So now we're talking about how to not only get involved with it, but and also how to sustain it. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, sir. Once I get into StarFish, what happens? Once I say yes, what do I have to do?
All right. Well, thanks for the introduction, and I appreciate you having me on here, being able to share a little bit of the wisdom that I've learned from some really smart people. And I guess maybe we'll start with this. If you go back to ancient history, right? If you look at the history of the world, and it's usually always a few elites at the top trying to control everybody else. Mm-hmm. That's usually how it goes, if you study economics, there's three factors of production. There's land, there's labor, and there's capital. Those are the three things. If you want to produce something, you need those three factors of production, right? And if you look at through the history, the elites, the people at the top, have always used one of those three factors to control everybody else, right? Mm-hmm. The first thing, back in the ancient times, there was this thing called, it's still going on today at some point, but slavery, right, was the control of labor force, right? I mean, there was physical slavery all over the place. I mean, most people were slaves somewhere to some lord or whatever. They had no rights whatsoever. They could barely eat from whatever. And but during the medieval times, when cities kind of started flourishing, there was something that went before. Actually, let me take that. Before that, in the medieval times, there was the as people became more free, the gospel came out. Obviously, people realized we were all equal in Christ. And then it started. Obviously, Paul going to Rome and realizing slaves and Romans, you're all the same. Right. And slavery kind of, took a little back step. And so the elites tried to figure out how can we still control the masses? And so they used the next factor of production, which was land. Right. Has anybody heard the term landlord? Mm. Back in the medieval times, there was tracts of land that were owned by the lords. Right. And the peasants had to work the land of the lord. Right. And basically that's their tribute to the lords. Right. And so that's how the few elites controlled the people, the masses, so to speak. Right. Well, then city states came, and people would go to the city, and the people that used to be peasants, they realized, man, I can go to the city and become a shoemaker or a tailor and have my own business and make money without the landlord. Right. And so that created independency of these elites, of the landlords, so to speak, right? So then the elites try to figure out, okay, what's the last bastion of production that we have is capital, money, right? And so literally when we talk about this financial matrix that's now basically kind of controlling the world, so to speak, it's the elite, again, the elites at the top trying to control everybody else through the last factor of production, which is finances, the money, right? And so if you look at the last couple of years, and throughout the last century, prices have always gone up, right? Inflation, right? And that's really, it's a hidden tax because these elites, they create monopoly money or nothing. and it's a tax on all of us, right? I was just sharing with a friend of mine, Pastor Martez Warren here, a quote from let me see here where I find it. Here we go. This is a quote from Malcolm X. Malcolm X said this: "My mother began to buy on credit. My father had always been very strong against credit. Credit is the first step into debt and back into slavery," he had always said.
Right.
My son is 20 years old, and that just today he got another credit card application in the mail. And he just got another one a couple days ago. It's like, so this is how this works now, right? See,
right.
Now, back in the days, you were a slave by force. Right? You were captured, you were a part of a war, your side lost, and now you're a slave to someone, but whatever, right? But you knew for sure, you knew you were a slave.
Right.
Nowadays, people voluntarily submit into slavery by going into debt. The Bible says the borrower is slave to the lender, right? And so what these elites have recognized, we can't force, for the most part, we can't force this anymore, but we have to give people some kind of incentive so they sell themselves into slavery. Right? So, hey, let's give them some credit cards. Yeah. Let's start with a little bit of debt, right? And start them early, right? So they get used to being in debt. And if you look at our country now and look at the rest of the world, that's what's going on, right? And so, again, the reason I tell you that little story is because the big purpose of StarFish is we want to set the captives free, right? We want to really give sight to the blind, all for God's glory, of course, and it starts with the credit cards, So StarFish is basically a way to eliminate the credit card system, right? And so, so there's kind of a great analogy. I like Star Wars, and obviously most people have seen Star Wars, the trilogy, right? And so,
right.
Rebellion, the rebels, right? And there's the evil empire, right? If you think about the financial system is the evil empire, right? And we're the consumer rebellion, right? And we're rebelling against the evil empire, right? Because their Darth Vader, their biggest weapon that they have, so to speak, is inflation, because that's like getting all of us. No matter if you're black or white, through inflation, they steal all of our money, right?
Yes.
So we're building this army of Jedi Knights, right? And so basically everybody that uses StarFish, right, is a Jedi Knight, because StarFish is like a lightsaber, right? Every time you use StarFish, you don't use the financial matrix system. You use cash. It's the only way to make a digital payment without the credit card system being involved. And so that we basically decide to not associate with the system anymore. So that's how we starve the system to death. Eventually, build a big community of people that don't participate, right? And so the Jedi Knights are the people that use StarFish, right? And so again, what StarFish was, for those of you who went the last couple of times, it's just a way to, instead of when you pay with your credit card or with cash at any of over hundreds of national brands merchants right now, Amazon, Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, and so on, you use your phone, right? You go on your phone, your StarFish platform, you make a gift card, you buy a gift card from the merchant, from Amazon or from Walmart for the exact amount of money that you need, and then you pay with that gift card that you bought from the merchant with cash, because you transfer money from your bank account into StarFish. And so now what happens? The merchant doesn't have to pay the credit card fees. Right, so it's a win for the merchant, it's a win for the customer, because we get instant cash back. So through StarFish, think about this: we have everything Walmart has, just cheaper. We have everything Amazon has, just cheaper. Right. And hundreds of national brands already. StarFish is a better way to pay. And what we're now doing is this consumer rebellion community that we're creating, right, is led by, I'll call them the Jedi Masters. Right, the Jedi Masters are the ones that basically teach the Jedis what to do, right? And the cool thing is, Oren and Chris my two friends that I've known for 25 years, wrapped a business model around this where the Jedi Masters actually can get paid, right? So you can actually make money by helping your friends save money,
right?
And so, all right, so let's talk about business a little bit. So when I realized now, looking back in my 58 years of life now, for 32 years, I was involved in the schooling system that I now realize was pretty much designed by the financial matrix to keep me in a broke mindset. What I mean? The mindset of an employee. I remember when I graduated from college, you'd think that after 9 years of these institutions of higher learning, you should be inspired to be a lifelong learner. Yet with me, it had the exact opposite effect. I hated books. Right? I thought I was done with learning. You're the greatest gift God has given me that should be used for the rest of my life to be a lifelong learner. They basically shut it off. right? And so I learned, there's a different world out there, that I need to engage my brain. I appreciate Pastor Devin. He's constantly probably trying to become a better person, even though, he's my age, and we're in the we'll never arrive, right? In the Bible, there's no concept of retirement.
Right.
There's nothing like that in there. Like we're supposed, as Christians, we're supposed to God will die. When God is done with us here, He calls us home. That's it.
Yeah.
And so the biggest lesson I learned from a business perspective is from a book called The Cash Flow Quadrant. Let me actually pull that up here. Share screen. All right. Yep, this one here. Share. Nope. Here we go. All right. So let me go to this real quick here. So there's a book called The Cash Flow Quadrant, right? And it talks about 4 different ways that people make money. And this is Robert Kiyosaki, the author. He used to fly helicopters in the Marine Corps back in the Vietnam War, came back from the war, invented the Velcro wallet, the surfer wallet, made millions of dollars. In his mid-30s, ended up becoming an entrepreneur, and he ended up writing very successful books. I think he's the only author in history that on the New York Times top 10 best-selling books had number 1, number 2, and number 3 at the same time.
Wow.
Yeah. So when he talks about money, he knows what he's talking about, right? And he shared something through this book, The Cash Flow Quadrant, that I never heard of, right? He says the 4 ways to make money. On the left side of the quadrant, there's employed and self-employed. So employee, people that work for themselves and work for somebody else, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when you work for somebody else, you trade your time, the most valuable thing that you have, for money, right? And I'm sure you guys heard time is money, right? Yeah. Same thing for self-employed. I could have become a consultant as an engineer and work for myself, but maybe a doctor with his own office or a lawyer with a practice, right? So those people are self-employed. But no matter if you work at McDonald's and you make $5 an hour or $10 an hour, or you some doctor makes a $500 an hour, if you trade your time for money, you're never going to have both.
Right.
And so now the crazy thing was, I didn't know this, but on the left side of the quadrant, there's 95% of all the people, but they only control 5% of all the wealth in this country. You think about it. 95% of people have 5% of the money, right?
Mm-hmm.
That means on the other side of the quadrant, the right side, I'll talk about in a minute, there's 5% of people and they have 95% of the money. And so I'm like, so the people on the right side, are they smarter? Are they better? Do they work harder? And Robert Kiyosaki said, no, the only difference between the left and the right is people on the right side have different information, right? Like, let me skip to that here. So let me fast forward a couple slides. All right, so right side of the quadrant, right? So you have people that are business owners and investors, right? Now, what happens here, the people, they're not smarter, they're not better, they don't work harder, but they've learned this concept called leverage. There's a famous ancient Greek mathematician, his name is Archimedes. Archimedes said one time, give me a lever long enough and I will move the world, right? And so investors have learned, to leverage money, to work for them, to make money, right? They literally make money while they sleep, right? Same with a B-type business. When you have a B-type business, you have a business system that does the work for you, right? I live in Michigan, and in the northwest corner of Michigan, there's a town called Traverse City. In that city, there's 2 McDonald's restaurants. And Kirk, who lived up there, said the people that own these McDonald's restaurants, they live in Brazil. So he just McDonald's work 24/7, 1 o'clock, making money, and people that own them are never there, right? Right. Because there's a business system that does the work, right? And so what businesses have learned how to leverage a system to basically make money while they sleep. Now it's not a get rich quick overnight. When you buy a McDonald's system, you basically pay for what we call a pipeline, right? But the way StarFish works, right? There's a very low upfront fee. To become a member, actually, is $111, and you get the 2 books from my friends Owen and Chris, the Payouts book. I don't know if I'm on the screen still, but the Payout and the Insidious book, which basically talks about the financial matrix. That told all the history of the finance. It's all in this book here. So for $111, you become a member. And now over time, you can create a passive residual income stream as you build a community of other rebels, so to speak, as Jedi Knights, that use StarFish, right? And so some people are just Jedi Knights, they just use StarFish to get some cash back. But from a logical perspective, man, if you could make money by helping your friends save money, why would you not do that? You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that's kind of the concept there. And then Orrin and Chris have leveraged the principles, the franchising principles from Robert Kiyosaki and some other people to make this a long-term sustainable income source. Like I was blessed, I met Orrin and Chris in 1999 where I learned first this concept here. And within 3.5 years, by building pipelines, I was able to replace almost double my engineering income. And in 2003, I fired my boss, and since then, and I'm not saying this to brag, look what I did. What happened was in 1999, I got different information. Right? That's the only difference between the left and the right. Right? I learned why would I spend 50, 60, 80 hours of my time and get paid one time?
Right.
When I can invest my time once and get paid for the rest of my life.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And so there's an opportunity here that's available for people to help us, build this consumer rebellion. The cool thing is the bigger community we build, the more people will get educated on what the financial system is doing, right? And it's not biased against the white, it's not the Republicans, the Democrats. No, it's the financial system against all of us.
Right. Right.
Really, I mean, it's almost like a movie, right? They're playing this movie for us, and we're all like get distracted. Oh, look at the squirrel over here. It's like, no, it's not like that.
Right. Right.
And so basically we're building this consumer rebellion. Now, let me go to something here. We talked about credit cards already. So here, this is how the consumer rebellion works. So we have a platform, right? And there's a simple benefit for people that are part of the consumer rebellion, the Jedi Knights, so to speak, right? They get perks, the cash back on almost every single store. We actually have a leadership conference here this weekend. And supposedly tomorrow night, they're going to make some big announcement, some other humongous improvement to the platform. I have no clue what it is, right? But it's the platform is going to be even better than it already is. So it's already fantastic. But I can't wait. We're going to find out tomorrow. But anyway, so the idea is we can get perks, cash back on things we're buying already, anyways, right? And for business owners, right, we can basically have platform profits. I mean, when you look at Amazon, Uber, Facebook, all these things are platforms that usually just make a couple founders millions and billions of dollars, right? What Orrin and Chris have done, created a platform where the average Joe Schmo can participate in the platform profits.
Okay.
Right? Which is, there's a book that was recently written called The Platform Revolution that talks about in the last 10, 20 years, most empires and wealth have been built by building platforms, and you look at the Facebooks and those kind of things. YouTube, those are all platforms, and usually there's a couple people at the top make billions of dollars, and everybody else like, oh, cool, Here, you can actually, the platform is already there, but you can leverage that and then generate residual income for ideas that other people have created, so it's a really cool thing. Okay. Now let me go to how do we build this, right? So there's some of you guys probably have been familiar with companies like Amway, America, those direct sales companies, and a lot of times people think that's what we do, like a pyramid type of deal. That's not what this is, right? So the way we build communities is something called team approach, right? And so what happens when somebody becomes a business owner, so this you person right here, right? They join a team of people that's already established. There's already some people that are very successful, and the successful people go always to the lowest person, the newest person on the team, and help that person bring in somebody else. And as you join the pipeline, right, the people above will put people in underneath you. It's almost like you get something for nothing. Everyone gets something for nothing, right? And so the idea is, for people to, when you become a member, you start with this apprenticeship team, this apprenticeship pipeline where you learn to build a community of people. And you have, again, a very successful person most likely helping you. And when you go through the apprenticeship first, you learn how to build pipelines, communities of people, and eventually you can apply what you're learning, right? And the success that you have building these pipelines, that's how you make money. I'll give you one quick example here. So when we get to a point where the first pipeline has about 20 people that are leveraging our system, to learn how to do this, right? They're attending events, to associate with successful people. You build a second pipeline with about 10 people, right, that are leveraging our system. And you're looking at about, with bonuses coming in, another $2,000 a month extra on top of what you make in your job, right? Now, I've been telling people, 6 to 12 months to make that happen. But we just had a couple of people out in Utah that did it in 30 days. So, how fast can this go? I don't know how long it takes to find 30 people, but apparently you can go faster than 6 months. I'm not saying everybody does that, but what I am saying is that, it really, the sky's the limit here, and you can really generate as much income as you want. I mean, there's nobody has made the most. You can make a little extra money, or you can make enough extra money to maybe like what I did. If you want to fire your boss, you can do that too.
Right.
But go back to this system. So when I studied math and statistics for a long time, probably too long. But when I saw this model here, I realized that this can fail, right? I mean, obviously people always ask, well, when we talk about financial freedom, those kind of things, people think it sounds too good to be true. Like, okay, I get it. It sounds good, but when you check it out, you realize this works. It's just like rolling dice. When you roll dice, you keep rolling dice. Eventually, you're going to get a 6. There's nothing that can stop you here, right? And if you keep building these pipelines, oops, that was too much. You're going to find somebody, right? So the system is, again, we can't guarantee people make money because it always depends on the person.
Right.
But like, from my perspective, if you guarantee yourself that you're going to do the work, there's nothing that can stop you from succeeding here. Right?
Okay.
So,
so once you get in as a member and you have the potential of either, like you were saying, using it for your own use or using it as a residual income. For you, personal story, when you came in, you're a member, how long did it how long has it been in you building your community?
So again, I always emphasize this is not to get rich quick overnight, right? And it's not easy, right? I'm like, no, I don't tell people, don't just get in this thing, you make millions. No, that's not how it works. It's
Right.
Juan and Chris, they used to be engineers, they're on motors, very successful at that. They really want to create a system where if you work hard, you get rewarded for what you do, right? It don't matter if you're black or white. Again, we don't care where you come from. The only care we care about is where you want to go in life, right? So if you have a feel like a high calling, or from God, or you get some big dreams, whatever, this is a system that can help you do that. Now, again, 25 years ago when I met Orrin and Chris, we didn't have StarFish, right? We didn't have smartphones back then, right? So the business model was very different, but a lot of the principles were already there, right? And I mean, to me, like the principle if you want to succeed in life, right, learn from successful people.
Right.
That just makes, I went to college for 9 years. I got an MBA from one of the top 25 business schools. I took entrepreneur classes, and I never learned that in school. All that my college career taught me is how to have a job, to work for somebody else, to work for the master, right? So I can basically slave, right? I not physically with shackles, but I was kind of caught in my own golden handcuffs here. My golden.
Sure. It was shackled in the mind.
Exactly, shackled in my mind. And that's how most people live, trying to get to death safely. Like, come on, there's way more to life than that, And did you know one of my favorite motivational speakers? His name is Les Brown. He said one time, 95% of people reach retirement age either dead, disabled, or broke. 95% of people reach retirement age either dead, disabled, or broke. Now, I don't know about you guys, like, when I get to 65, I don't want to be dead, disabled, or broke. 3 of those things don't sound good.
Exactly.
Right? And so, again, there's way more to life than having, and there's nothing wrong with having a job. Maybe some people, if you call to do your job, then do great there, by all means, right? But like, I was not called for that, and so again, I met Orrin and Chris in 1999. I kept my full-time job as an engineer, so kind of during the day, I kept working on my job to provide income, and so I could sustain my living, so to speak. And I kept working. I started working part-time on building a pipeline. And within about 3.5 years of doing that, so keeping my full-time job during the day, but then building my pipeline at night, like I said, almost doubled my income in my business. So I was making almost double the income in my part-time business, and I was making my job as an engineer full-time. Right. And so in 2003, February 20th, I was able to walk away from my job because I just didn't need the job anymore.
Sure.
So since then, and I've been, I met my wife a couple of weeks after that, instantly, and we've got 7 kids, and so we've been stay-at-home parents ever since. Over 20 years, 22 years, I've been job optional now. And again, I'm not saying that to brag. It's just I met people that had the success that I wanted. Orrin because had time and money. I wanted time and money, and I learned from them what to do, right? And so now the system is way better already. They've been working on this for 3 decades. We have StarFish now, which is an amazing product. I mean, like we really have a product that everybody that checks it out, who doesn't want to save money at Walmart and Amazon? Everybody, right? And so I just know that what we have right now is an opportunity that not only can it help people achieve the success that they want, but it changes. It's going to change this world, because the financial system is so prevalent, not just in the United States, but everywhere. And most people don't realize it, right? Because the system has done a really, really good job dividing us, right? I mean, the fact that you have a black pastor and some white guy on a Zoom here, that doesn't happen a whole lot. You know what I mean? Most of the time,
right about that.
we're all fighting each other and against each other. That's what they don't want. They can't stand us uniting, because that's the one thing that's going to stop the whole mechanism, is for the people to unite.
Exactly.
Right? And so really, guys, the big picture is we want to unite the people, because once we unite, it's game over for that financial matrix.
Right.
So when you have, like I said, we have a big leadership conference coming here this weekend. I mean, there'll be thousands of people, right? And you'll see people from Africa. They live in Canada. There's this humongous community of Africans that live in Canada and the United States. They're all part of the consumer because they love it. Very entrepreneurial, right? They love the community, right? And they realize, hey, this is about setting the captives free, right? But a bunch of the stuff in Africa, all the hunger in Africa that's going on there, right? It's because of the financial system. It's creating havoc over there as well, right? And these Africans, they want to make a difference, right? And so this weekend, you'll see a community of thousands of people from all walks of life, and we're all united. It's the coolest thing. It's really, I feel like it's how church should be, right?
Right.
Church should be a bunch of black people and a bunch of white people. No, it should be everybody.
Everybody, right?
Everybody, all children of God, we should all unite together to give glory to Him, right? No matter if you're black or white, we're all from the same God.
Sure, and I mean, and that's still a biblical concept, because the early church started in homes, and when the early churches were coming together, each brought their gifts so that no one had lack. And we've definitely lost that concept, where now one person is trying to have all the needs met and everybody else is lacking. And so, it's important. I think it's important as a part of the church that we talk about money from a stewardship standpoint, not from a prosperity standpoint. Because none of us got all that we have unless we were born with it. We had to work for it. And I want to reemphasize that, as you were saying, this is not a get rich quick. This is not we're making millionaires. No, we're creating freedom. And freedom, you really can't put a dollar sign, a price tag to it, to know that, you are actually receiving from what you spend, as opposed to just spending and receiving. So it's a both and, it's not an either or, but it's a process and it's a mind shift. And I think the more we discuss it, or the more people find out about it and inquire about it, the better off they are in knowing that they can do it. Now, of course, with any program, with any change in process, there is that tug of war that goes on, because you're fighting process versus convenience. Talk a little bit about how the transformation was and can be to become a part of this type of community.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I love the fact that this really fits into anybody's schedule, right? So there's no set hours, right? So then the nice thing is, when you become a member of the Consumer Rebellion, you own your own business, which means you're the boss, right? There's nobody that sets hours for you and says you have to do this. No, you are the boss. You do whatever you want to do, right? You put in an hour a week or 12 hours, whatever you want, right? And knowing that what you put in is what you got to get out, right? I remember, I think it was Michael Jordan said one time, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Michael Jordan didn't become the best basketball player of all times because he got lucky, right? Or he was born at 6'6". Like, no, like he worked extreme. I read a book one time where when the Bulls showed up for practice, Michael Jordan was already there for an hour practicing by himself.
Yeah.
And he did the practice with everybody else, and then everybody else took off. He stayed for another hour after that and practiced by himself again. He worked harder than anybody else. That's why he had the success that he had, right?
Sure.
Jerry Rice, right? You look at Tom Brady, right? They work extremely hard, as my friend Pastor Raymond Abernathy from St. Louis says. Hard work works.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and that's what this is. I mean, like, again, like, unlike a job where you're forced to do certain things, right? And here you make your own schedule, right? You have to, which is, I was just on a call today with Warren and Lori Woodward, and Lori Woodward said, you know, that it really comes down to self-discipline, right? Self-discipline is really hard. You know, I heard a speaker say one time, discipline comes, right? Whether from within or from without, but discipline comes, right? You either discipline yourself, right? So you will have the success that you earn, right, by your own self-discipline, or you have somebody else discipline you, which is usually a job, a boss, you know, that says you got to do this. So where the discipline has to come. You know what I mean? And so again, the nice thing about this is it fits into people's lifestyle, right? Because there's, for the most part, there's no set hours. I mean, we got a couple of things, but most you can work whatever hours you want. You know, early mornings, late afternoon, evenings, whatever you want. You know, and so it makes it. That's really. And you can do it. You don't have to. I didn't have to quit my job and do this, right? I kept my full-time job and fit it into my schedule wherever I could. You know,
right.
So the traditions was. I mean, it took some you know, scheduling with my plan or whatever, but it's not very hard. You know, it's a simple transition. And guys, the blessings that come out of this, the financial blessings are fantastic. You know, but being part of a learning culture. Right, a culture of people from all walks of life. They're all intentional about personal development, becoming their personal best, right? To develop all their God-given talents. Some of you guys know people that are not using all their God-given talents. Most people, you know what I mean? Yeah. So here, when you're surrounded by a group of by a community of people that they turn the TV off, right? That they read a book, right? That they listen to self-development audios. You know, they go to seminars where you learn how to succeed, you know, and then become the best version of yourself. It's a blessing to be part of a community like that, because, I mean, I've been married now for 22 years almost, you know, and without this community and the books I've read, you know, the things I've learned through this, I don't think I'd probably be divorced without it, you know, because I'm learning and how to become a better husband, a better father, right? It's the blessings are amazing.
Sure. And I think, as you were saying, it being a part of a community of like-minded people. Tell me a little bit about how that community comes together. Are there weekly meetings, bi-weekly meetings?
Yes.
How does that happen?
It's very important, right? I mean, I'm probably sure people heard of this thing called Weight Watchers, right? That's a community of people. Well, guess what? They want to lose weight, right? So what they realize, you know what? If we try to do by ourselves, it's very hard to do. But if we get together once a week, right, where there's encouragement there's accountability there, all these kind of things, coaching, right, it works. Right. They are very so Weight Watchers. They meet once a week I don't know. We meet once a week on a Tuesday night. You know, where the community, the StarFish community, gets together at some location, probably near you somewhere, because we already have hundreds some locations, I think, around the United States and Canada already. Right, in most major cities, there's events, and then the Tuesday night, 8 o'clock, they get together and we go through kind of the concept of what we're doing. Right, it's a great way to introduce some new people to the community and to the concept, and it's a free meeting. Right, I mean, people can come there and come check it out, because again, we don't want to sell anything to anybody. We want people to sell themselves. Right. If you see, like, I remember the first time we walked into that meeting, I drove all the way. I lived in Holland, Michigan. Michigan looks like a hand, right? So I lived in Holland, Michigan, right, and I drove all the way to Flint, like 2.5 hours, right, to go to my first meeting. But I walked in there and everybody was smiling. They were all so positive. I'm like, this is way different than my job. My job was grumpy, you know.
Right.
Like, people are excited. They're smiling because they realize, you know, they're excited about life. They're excited about achieving the success that they want. You know, being a difference maker in that community, right? That's I think how you change this world. You make people the best version of themselves, and wherever they're at, their family, their neighborhood, their church, right? They become a light. Right? That's really the whole thing. Create a bunch of lights that shine for God's glory, as Matthew 5:16 says.
That's it. That's it. I was before we came on here, I was on a Zoom call with a gentleman from London,
Oh.
and trying to talk about the TED Talks.
Mm-hmm.
And he was asking me, why do you want to do this, and what do you think the impact will be? And I honestly told him, I said, I don't know. I said, TED Talks has always been something that I've wanted to do because it's a platform to express who I am.
Yeah.
And what my purpose is, and to talk about, healthy, positive relationships, and how relationships really drive everything that we do.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're, working for a corporation, working for yourself, working, within your family, with your significant other, and then eventually with yourself. It's all about relationships. And the night before, last night, I was teaching on relationships versus fellowships.
Mm.
And I was talking about union versus communion.
Mm.
And while, we strive to be in relationship, a lot of times we don't understand the power of fellowship. And so I'm relating to you, we're both on here, we're relating to one another, but the essence of what we're doing is that we're fellowshipping with one another. We're sharing information, we're sharing what's going on that will better not only each other, but ourselves. And so he kept asking me, as I was talking to him and sharing with him, he kept saying, I just love your energy. And I said, well, I have this, whatever you call energy, is because I know who I am. Mm-hmm. And I know my purpose, and I don't jump to other people's lanes to do whatever. I know what I'm supposed to do, and I'm a connector. I'm the person that brings people together. And whatever comes out of it is the glory that God gets out of it. It's not, oh, Devin, you put them two people together and they did it. No, God put me with that person. I put that person with somebody else, and God got the increase, not me. And so I think what we've been trying to do here is really tell people that if you want to change, you have to change.
Amen.
You can say all these things about wanting to save this and wanting to have this amount of money or this amount of income, but that doesn't happen just because you say it. It happens because you change the way you look at it.
That's right.
And I think what StarFish really represents is really what the church was supposed to be in the beginning. It was really supposed to be a community of like-minded people that were doing things together corporately for the glory of God.
That's right.
And the biggest thing that separates us is our finances.
Yeah.
And it creates this false sense of relationship that is not even that doesn't even create fellowship. And because the guy asked me, he said, well, what if you don't, what if it doesn't work out that you get to be on a TED Talk? And I said, well, I already have 3 shows that I teach on the internet. I said, I got 5,000 followers on my TikTok. I got 265 followers on my YouTube channel. What we're already thinking about is creating clusters in the cities that we've worked with clients in my business. Mm-hmm. I can create my own TED Talk. I said, that's not a problem. I said, but there's something about the TED Talk that I'm just drawn to. But if it doesn't happen, it's not going to make me any less than who I am. Yeah. And I think what we're talking about is when you become a part of a community that really has you in mind along with your finances in a way that is in an approach, that walks with you as opposed to just trying to teach you, and that was why I wanted to do this, because I wanted it to be relational, that there's a human side to it. It's not like, oh, well, if I get into this program and I pay this money, in 6 weeks, you're going to see this. No, it might not be 6 weeks, but you'll meet people along the way that may benefit what you're doing, that they will say, well, wow, because you came at me this way, as opposed to coming at me where everybody else does, like Shackley and Amway and, all these multimedia, multi-level marketing type of things. And it's bugging your friends and bugging your family and all this kind of stuff. No, it's coming from the other person's perspective. How do you see your money now? How would you like to see your money in the future? And what's the vehicle for you to get there, knowing that we have this system that is not meant for you to achieve that type of goal in the current system that we have? And so I think it's important, as we have done now, this is our third show, that it's important that we walk with people and help them to understand that it's not going to happen overnight. You're going to have to do some things. You're going to have to change some habits. But if you stick with it, if you stay consistent, you're going to see the benefit every time you go to the store. You don't have to wait, until Johnny comes on board and Sammy comes on board, because if Johnny and Sammy come on board, that's great, but you're still getting the benefit every time you go to the store. You're getting a shashing coming back into your wallet every time you use this system. And so it's not at the year end, it's not every quarter, it's every day. And it's just getting into a new habit so that you can reap a new benefit. So, all right, sir. Well, we have finished that part. Well, next week, we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of the money side and talk about, okay, we done told you why, we done told you what it does. We've told you how. Now we're going to tell you the benefit. Okay, we tiptoed around it today, but now next week we're going to get really into how you can become either a member or you can become a business owner. All right, and either way, the benefit is to you and your family at the end of the day. Holger, may get a little out of this. Devin ain't getting nothing out of this. Okay,
and Pastor Devin, I really appreciate that. I mean, you are just a connector, right? You just invest your time into the kingdom because you want to make a difference, right? You receive full benefit out of this. I commend you for that. I really respect you a lot for that. You are a great man of God that just plays you're playing your role that God has given you.
That's it. When my wife likes to use the analogy of basketball. And she's like, and we were talking about Michael Jordan. She likes to talk about Kobe. And she's like, Kobe along with Michael is one of the greatest, they're the GOATs, greatest of all times. But they couldn't be that great if they didn't have a team.
Yeah, that's right.
Kobe could not do it all by himself, And when she tells the story, I sometimes tell this story that Shaq told at Kobe's memorial. He said that they were on the team, and it was the time when Kobe scored like 50 points or close to 100 points. And Rick Fox and Steve Kerr and all those guys, I'm getting names mixed up, but anyway, the other people on the team went to Shaq, or they knew they were friends, and he said, they were like, hey Shaq, Kobe got to pass the ball, man. Every time he comes down, he's just shooting, man. He's not passing the ball. And so Shaq was like, okay, I'll go talk to him. And so he goes over, in the locker room and goes and talks to him and says, hey, Kobe, some of the other players are kind of feeling like you're not playing with everybody. He's like, there's no I in team. And so Kobe said, you're right. There is no I in team, but there is an I in win, MF. So Shaq said he went back over to the team and said, let Kobe do what he gonna do. This is his night. Let him do what he gonna do. And I think that, like I said, that was the time he scored, 60-something points. Because he was just in a zone, and the rest is proverbial history. I mean, Michael did the same thing. Wilt Chamberlain did the same thing. You know, those that reached that pinnacle, but they still didn't do it without a team. If the other four people weren't keeping the other 4 or 5 people out the way, you know, he would have never been able to score those type of points. So the point I'm making is that we need each other in order to achieve. And so this concept is one in which, yeah, you're going to have to change little things. You're going to have to tweak a little things, but the benefit is really going to be towards you, towards that freedom that all of us want. You know, at some point, all of us want to be financially free. None of us were made, honestly, to work for someone for the rest of life. Not our generation and the generations that are coming. Our parents, they knew that because that's all they knew.
Right.
You know, and so it was to get that gold watch, you know, get that little plaque of doing 20, 30 years. But they also received benefit.
Right.
You know, companies, you know, they got that pension. They didn't have to worry about, you know, they could retire and live off of what they saved. We're not there anymore. You know, you got companies now that don't even do pensions. They sell the pensions to somebody else, and then you're out of your money. You don't even know. So why pass that on to our next generation and generation after that? Because they're catching on. I mean, they're making money at 30. You know, the money that I thought I would have never made, they're making at 30. But again, it's a mindset that you're still stuck in the race. Even though you're making a lot more money, you're still using that card, and that card is paying someone else much more than what you're making, even though you may be making a lot. And so I hope these talks and conversations are helping you to kind of think differently about, you know, your credit card or your debit card. And we want to give you now, like I said, next week, we want you to come back and we want to give you then the nuts and bolts. We want to tell you what it takes to be a member, what it takes to be a business owner in the StarFish family, and what the benefits are of both. So you don't want to miss next week. And we've already got next month, we've already got another financial matters that we're going to be presenting with the same concept, but a different program. One that I've already vetted, because you know, nobody gets to me unless I don't talk to you. And so I was talking with him, and he's excited about his program and walking through our process. And so we're not going to stop this. We're just going to be bringing different people in a month to show you a new way of using your money and being good stewards of your money, because God does not give you that money to squander. He does not give you what he gives you for you to be proud of yourself.
Amen.
He gives it to you because he trusts you. And so we want to build that trust so that the blessings can continue to flow. All right. Any last words there, Holger, before we let people go?
Well, you know, we talked about unity, right? And community has unity in it, right?
Right.
So the concept of what we do with the StarFish platform is unity through community.
That's it. That's it. All right, sir. Well, we have done another one, and it has been successful.
Amen.
So we look forward to next week at 4:30 Central Time, 5:30 in Michigan, 2:30 in California. But we're going to be here at 4:30 because that's my time. All right. So until next time, may God's richest and greatest blessings be yours. Peace.
God bless.